What's going on, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and we are back with the Wave Report number 25. We're going to cover some of the fights over the past weekend. I'm not going to cover them all because I didn't watch them all. It was just too many cards. It was a Don King card. There was like a couple of dazn cards. Actually, a few of dazn cards. And we also had like a top-ranked ESPN card as well. So I got home kind of late. I took a long drive. I had to go down to Virginia for a family emergency, and I had to drive right back to New York. And when I got back home, I was able to watch a majority of the top ranked card. All right, so we're going to talk about a few of those fights this past weekend and some of the ones that I was able to see this morning. And we're just going to go over some boxing news today. All right, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. All right, hit me on Twitter and all social media platforms. And let's get started. Let's start out with some crazy KOs last night. Let's start out with the KOs, all right? There's a lot of KOs. I'm not going to cover all of them, but I saw Cassius Chaney. He knocks out Trevor Bryan. And Trevor Bryan, this was on the Don King card. Trevor Bryan used to be like the WBA world title holder, okay? He's been fighting under Don King and his cards. And you know, he had beaten Berman Stavern a few years back, and I think that's what earned him the WBA title. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that is what earned him the WBA world title, not the super title. But with this world title, you know, it lines you up and puts you in position to fight for the full title, which Triple G went on to fight him and stop him. And I know Brian did he was doing a lot on social media. You know, he was being really funny. Like, he was really selling the fight. And the fight, I remember that fight and seeing the crowd was like empty seats in a random gymnasium somewhere. It was crazy, but, you know, Trevor Bryan got stopped by Daniel Dubois. And he fights this guy, Cassius Chaney, who I've seen before. I started watching him not too long ago. I seen this fight with what's his name, George Arias, the guy that, you know, people were saying was like the Dominican Mike Tyson. I was doing some film study on Arias because he was going on to fight Jared Anderson. But anyway, Cassius Chaney, didn't watch the whole fight, but I saw the knockout of Trevor Bryan. Crazy knockout. He caught him with like a right hook and during an exchange. And Trevor Bryan got knocked out. Devastating knockout. I mean, guy got dropped. And he was out cold. And, you know, Trevor Bryan, who's not a bad boxer, I just thought he was always out of shape. I always figured he would be decent if he was in, like, some better shape. I know he beat Stavern, but Stavern was super far past it by the time they fought. But seeing Chaney just knock him out like that in devastating fashion, man. I'm not saying the dude needs to retire, but... you know, if you're not going to take... I mean, he looked sloppy. Trevor looked in terrible shape, you know. And he just fell over and got knocked out, and that was that, you know. And then on that same card, we had Noel McKellian, all right, one of the top cruisers for a while. You know, I remember watching him a while back, and I actually thought he won the fight against Marius Briedis. Okay, and I know Briedis was fighting with an injury or something like that. But this was a fight where I thought Briedis had lost some years ago. And McKellian fought Junior Makabu, who is the former WBC champion, all right? Just recently lost to Badou Jack. And this fight was for the vacant title because I believe Badou Jack he's vacated the title after beating Junior Makabu. And I believe he's going to go up to Bridgerweight and try to win a title at another division. I think this would be like his fourth division if he were to win at Bridgerweight. You know, we know that Bridgerweight is still only a WBC weight. It's like a junior heavyweight. It's that, you know, it's in between heavyweight and cruiserweight. You know what I mean? But he's looking to win a title up at the Bridgerweight. And, you know, I haven't really been following it. I remember Oscar Rivas winning the title, but I haven't really followed the division as far as like who's ranked there. I don't know what's going on with the division, but I know that the title was vacated and now Noel McKellian is now the WBC champion at Cruiserweight. Now the division is kind of like I feel like it's a weaker division. I think you have a guy in Jai Opetaia who's clearly better than everybody else. And honestly, Maurice Breedis, even though he's older, you could still make the argument that he's the second best in the division, right? Even though he's older, yeah, until somebody else clearly beats him and he retires or something like that, I would still consider him to be the second best. You know what I mean? But you have Jai Opetaia, who's a champion. You have Dylan Smith, who's a champion, who he has a fight coming up. And I just don't. I'm not really feeling the division like that. I think Cruiserweight. I keep saying a few years ago, it was stronger. I think when Usyk was still there, when they had the World Boxing Super Series, I think it was a stronger division. But recently, it's looked kind of weak, in my opinion. All right, but that was a crazy knockout too. Junior Makabu got folded, and I think he needs to really consider retirement at this point. All right, I just think he's not young, and he's been losing left and right. You know what I mean? So I think at this point, and I always thought that he was like a champion, a very beatable champion. At this point, I think that he's the guy. When he was a champion, he was a guy that everybody would go after to try to pick up a strap that's moving up the cruiser. He's never been the really best at cruiser. You know what I mean? But crazy knockout again. And then we had F.A. Ajagba. He was the headliner for the ESPN Top Rank card. He fought Joseph Goodall. Now, I wasn't familiar with Goodall at all. This guy beat Stephen Shaw recently in an upset. And we know that Stephen Shaw had recently I'm not sure if it was a draw. I think F.A. might have won like a split decision against Stephen Shaw. I remember watching a fight. It was a very boring fight. Right, neither one of them really wanted to engage. Just like the rounds kept going back and forth, and I think they gave it to Ajagba, but it was like a close fight. But it wasn't a good fight. It wasn't a good performance from neither. But I saw Top Rank. They posted the fight with Goodall and Shaw on their YouTube channel yesterday or the day before yesterday. Right, at least a couple days before the fight. And I saw it, and I was unaware. I didn't see the fight. I saw the fight. Goodall, was able to beat Shaw, and I was watching a highlight video, and I was like, all right, this guy is decent, but his style is tailor-made for F.A. Ajagba, the exchanges he had with Shaw, Shaw didn't look strong. Defensively, he looked pretty poor compared to what we've seen in the F.A. Ajagba fight. And I said, maybe he caught Shaw on a good night. I think this guy is defensively flawed. He's there to get hit. And in these exchanges, of course, Ajagba is the bigger, stronger puncher. And I figured he was going to get the knockout, which he did in 4 rounds, dominating fashion. To be honest, though, when I look at F.A. Ajagba, I'm still looking for, improvements. His head movement is just not available. It hasn't been. And even though he's improved as far as, I think he's gotten, from the original fights that I've seen of him, at least, I think he's gotten a little better at, controlling distance, at least. There's really nothing there outside of the 1-2 still. And he doesn't move his head at all. And, it's going to be a time where, I don't know. I think they're probably setting him up with Jared Anderson or Arslan Beck, or I know Zhang was there last night at the fight. And I know F.A. Ajagba said he called him out, said he wanted to fight. I just don't think F.A. is going to be anyone close to the top 10, even top 20 guys. The most of the top 20 guys will probably beat him. I don't even want to say top 10, but I think most of the top 20 guys beat him because once you get past the right hand, he really doesn't have anything else there. He's not a volume puncher. He's not a pressure fighter. He's not really versatile at all. He's a one-trick pony, and he's defensively flawed, and he's really not that fast neither. I just don't think there's not much there that comes with F.A. Ajagba, except a big right hand. And once you get past that, he's pretty beatable, and I think guys like Zhang and people he's more willing. Even the guys like Arslan Beck, for example. I don't like Arslan Beck. I think he's extremely flawed, but he's a brawler. He's a big man. He throws a lot of punches. He's very aggressive. And, he swarms you. And I think F.A. Ajagba, yes, he has the right hand, but if they were to set that fight up, which is a fight I really expect to happen at some point, if they were to set that fight up, I just don't know. Like, F.A. would have to go in that fight in a brawl mentality. Like, this guy is also defensively flawed. If he's able to connect with the right hand, maybe he can hurt Arslan Beck. But you got to worry about Arslan Beck hurting you too, because you're easily there to get hit. So with all this time that we've been watching him, since the time the guy walked out of the ring and didn't fight him, he was getting all these highlights of these big KOs. There's been very, very little improvement. Even after losing to Frank Sanchez, there's been very, very little improvement in his game. And I really don't know what else to say at this point. I think at this point, he's just going to be a guy that people are going to either tune up against, or they're going to, the prospects moving up, they're going to have to go through him to get that win, that noticeable win on their resume. You know what I mean? And I think he's going to be that guy. And if a guy like Zhilei Zhang takes that fight, I know he called them out. If he were to take that fight, it's only because Zhang is looking to stay busy and he can't get the fights he wants, because right now he's gunning for Tyson Fury. He's gunning for Anthony Joshua. He's gunning for like the top guys in the division. He's not really looking backwards. He's already 40 years old. So he's looking for a big fight. And I don't think that he's looking for F.A. Ajagba unless he's looking for a fight to just stay busy in. You know what I mean? And even though Ajagba, yes, he has a puncher's chance, that's all he has. And he has a puncher's chance with just one particular punch. You know what I mean? So, listen, dope highlights when he was on the come up, when he getting knockouts. But once he started fighting at a higher level, it just seemed like, okay, what else can you do? You know what I mean? Extremely limited fighter. All right, and let's talk about the last fight. I'm not gonna go through all of the fight. Oh, you know what? Let me just bring up one more fight before we get to Joe Cordina. William Foster III. I was watching this fight. Shout out to my man Boxing Gyms. I was on his panel last night, and we was watching the William Foster III fight against Henry LeBron. And I mean, Foster, up and coming guy that they've been trying to push. He's beaten De Los Santos, who's going to be Shakur Stevenson's next opponent, right? And I rate him well. I rate De Los Santos well, but I haven't seen the fight with him before, so maybe I need to go back and rewatch that fight to understand exactly why he lost his fight. But Foster looked terrible. Coming straight forward, didn't know how to cut off LeBron. LeBron was setting traps all night long, counter him. Southpaw fighter. Foster just looked very robotic, and an annoying part about it was this guy was just smiling. He came into the fight smiling. He was losing and still smiling in the earlier rounds, and he was clearly getting outboxed. I mean, you really can't give him any more than 1 or 2 rounds in the fight. I thought that the cards were too close. I think LeBron clearly won the fight, clearly, and he was beating him any way he wanted to beat him. And Foster just didn't have anything for him. You know what I mean? He looked tired. He looked gassed. He was getting outworked. He was getting out hustled. He was getting outboxed. You know what I mean? Everything you can do to a fighter, LeBron did to him. And Foster didn't have anything. And for him to have some solid wins under his name, it makes me I got to go back and watch these fights. Exactly what was he doing to win these other fights? Because LeBron made it look extremely easy. He was unbothered the entire fight. Yes, Foster landed a few good shots here and there, but he wasn't winning rounds at all. And it was a clear victory. It was just an embarrassment for a guy that's smiling throughout the fight as if he's really doing something that he wasn't. He wasn't doing anything. He was just walking into traps the entire fight. You know what I mean? Good boxing from from LeBron. Good movement as well. Good timing, good movement, good pivoting around him. And it was just too easy. It was so easy. It was just like basic boxing just beat this guy easily, you know. But let's talk about Joe Cordina and Edward Vasquez. Very good fight, very close fight. I did score the fight. I left my scorecard over there. I hadn't written it down because I watched the entire fight this morning. Yesterday I was watching it, but I wasn't focused on it because I was on the road. But I had it while I was driving up. And, you know, I was listening to commentary. I was looking at Tony Bellew and stuff. And I was like, I'm going to have to watch this fight again because I'm just keeping my eye on it. But I'm keeping my eye on the road mainly. But I'm listening to the commentary as I'm watching it. And then I was listening to other boxing channels too. Like I would go off of it, I was listening to Showbiz a little bit. But anyway, very, very close fight. All right. I think really, hold on. Let me get this card. All right, sorry about that. All right, very close fight. A lot of people saying robbery. A lot of people thought Vasquez won the fight. I wasn't surprised that the fight was close. You know, I thought I seen Vasquez's fight with Raymond Ford live. I remember watching that, and I thought Vasquez probably edged the fight. I thought Ford got a decision. You know, I mean a gift decision win. All right. I thought this fight was pretty close. I didn't think it was a robbery. All right, but I thought 160, 112 maybe might have been a little wide. I think that's what most people think. I think you can go 115, 113 either way or draw. You know, that's how I seen it. It was a couple of close rounds, though. It was more than a couple, man. It was like 4. I had like 4 rounds where I was having a little issues picking the winner. So I don't think it's a robbery. You know, I know 116, 112 seems a little wide. But it was a tough fight to score, you know, and it was a lot of rounds where I thought rounds were like stolen rounds, you know what I mean? But I scored it. I gave the first to Joe. I gave the second to Joe, which was competitive. And some of these rounds were competitive that I gave to like Joe or Vasquez. The third I gave to Joe, but that could have gone either way. The fourth I gave to Joe. I thought Joe stole the round. The fifth and sixth I gave to Vasquez. I thought the sixth was close. I think the seventh was the only like really, really good round for Joe. You know what I mean? I thought that was the best round. I think that was a beautiful round, the way he boxed. I gave the eighth to Joe, but this is the beginning of the dramatic change in the fight. And in the rest of the rounds, I pretty much gave 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, I gave the Vasquez. So I had it a draw, okay? The 12th round was like, it could easily be a 10-10 round. It was just too much back and forth. You know? It's just like, I have rounds 12, 8 was close, 6 was close to me. The third was close. You know, the fourth was close. It was a lot of close rounds. You know, I mean, it's just, I thought Joe was doing better in the first half. I think he won the first half, and I think Vasquez won the second half. I think what Joe was doing right was when he was fighting at range, all right, and controlling distance well with his jab. I mean, he's the bigger, taller, longer fighter. He's bigger. He's much bigger. You know, he's a big guy at 130. And, you know, Vasquez, he's I don't know how long he's been at 130, but he's a lot smaller than Joe Cordina. I thought Joe's shots in the first half were more effective by far. You know, even some in the second half, Joe was sitting down on his punches a lot more. I like Joe's shots to the body a lot. You know, I liked his jab when he was using it. His jab was on point. The body shots was on point. You know, the defense was definitely on point in the first half of the fight. All right, for the most part in the first half. But he did a good job when he fought a certain way. I think there was a point in the second half where he started to slow down. He stayed on the ropes a little too long. He engaged and traded with Vasquez a little too much. And the thing with Vasquez, more volume. He closed the gap. It was more volume for him. No, he wasn't really sitting down on the punches like that, but he was able to throw more than Joe and out throw him and outland them at points. All right, I still think Joe was definitely landing the more telling shots throughout the fight, but there was a point where when Joe really slowed down in those later rounds, you just had to give them rounds to Vasquez because he was just outworking him to me. You know what I mean? And he was a lot of those shots with Joe, heavy shots that Joe was landing. Vasquez did a lot. He was doing good in blocking a lot of the shots. You know, outside of the body shots, a lot of those shots, he was keeping that left hand up and he was blocking and parrying a lot of those shots on the low. You know what I mean? I wouldn't say Tony did bad commentary or no, I wouldn't say Tony Bellew had bad scoring, but you can tell he's clearly biased towards a guy he likes and that he knows and he's followed throughout his career. You know, and I think sometimes when you hear Joe Cordina, all you hear is Joe Cordina. It's like it can easily throw off the viewer. You know what I mean? I don't think his scorecard was bad. I think his scorecard was pretty on point. Unofficially, but you know how you listen to commentary, it can have an effect on the viewers. You know what I mean? If they're not really focused on what's happening in the ring. Very, very close fight to me. You know, I don't think anyone really won the fight. I know Joe is the champion. He was the IBF champion. He was defending the title. This was his first title defense. You know, the last time he won the strap, you know, he pretty much. The last time he won the strap, he got stripped because of an injury. I think he had like some sort of hand injury, right? So, you know, look, Joe's a good fighter, you know, and let me just look up Edward Vasquez real quick because I'm curious to know how many fights he's had up at 130. Okay. Yeah, he hasn't really been up there that long, right? He hasn't really. He fought in his last fight above 126 a few months ago during the summer. But he's clearly a small guy at 130. I don't know if he stays there, but Joe is more on the bigger side at 130, and this guy has just moved up, and he's not big at the weight. And I think that played a factor because there was a lot of times that Vasquez pretty much was forced to having to engage with him because, you know, he had to close the gap. He had to throw more in order to make it competitive. And Joe, being much bigger, was able to just push him off him or out-muscle him. You know what I mean? And yes, it burned him out. But, you know, I think Joe should have performed better for the fact that he was, like, much bigger. You know what I mean? And he's, like, you know, he's been at the weight. So I'm not sleeping on what Vasquez did because, like I said, I thought he was very impressive against Raymond Ford. I mean, Joe did a lot better than Raymond Ford in that fight. So, but this is a debatable fight. You know, if you got Vasquez winning, cool. I'm not trying to argue with you. If you got Joe edging it, either way, I think either fighter could have edged it. I thought it was a draw. I don't think anyone clearly won the fight to me, especially based on the way I scored it. Swing rounds galore, though, you know. Tough fight. But moving forward, at 130, you know, Joe seems to be interested in the Navarrete fight. At least that's who he called out. I don't know if he's really in and down for that fight. He called out Navarrete. He called out Lee Wood, who's going to be moving up from 130. Kind of disappointed about that because I kind of wanted to see him unify. You know, I mean, the Mauricio Lara fights were fun. The Josh Warrington fight was fun. But I kind of wanted him to unify against Lopez or Robesi Ramirez. And being that these guys are like matchroom guys, you know, and they're British fighters, I'm expecting them to make a Joe Cordina fight with Lee Wood. You know, Lee Wood, who's going to be moving up. Should be a good fight, you know. I mean, Lee Wood got skills, man. He do. But now he's moving up to 130 and fighting a bigger man than Joe, who has skills too. You know. Now, as far as Joe fighting like Shockey Foster, Foster had that crazy fight with Rocky last week. Much better performance in my opinion than Joe Cordina this week. But Shockey Foster, I think, would outbox Joe. But I wouldn't expect Joe to fight him. You know what I mean? Risk reward factor. I'm just being honest. I would love to see the fight, but I just don't see guys really fighting Shockey Foster unless they have to. I just don't see it. I think I didn't watch the press conference, but I did see a title of a video saying that Joe is not interested in the fight with Shockey Foster because there's no money there. I mean, are you surprised? I'm not. I know Eddie said he was gonna be trying to make a fight with him and Foster. He's not gonna fight Foster. Joe. Eddie would have to throw the bag at Joe to take that fight, and if he did, I don't know if he's worth the bag right now. You know what I mean? I think the Lee Wood fight is the most realistic fight. Even the Navarrete fight, I don't really think is realistic because Navarrete is going to be, he's in top rank. Top rank has a stable of fighters, and he can just fight Conceição. And if he wins that fight, he could just move up to 135 and fight Shakur or some of the other better fighters up at 135 that are with top rank, with bigger names and stuff. You know what I mean? I just don't see the fights happening. So I think Joe Cordina fights Lee Wood. Again, I would love to fight him, unify, fight Foster, fight Navarrete, even fight Hector Garcia. I would love those fights. But again, guys at 126, 130, they're just not known to unify. All right, historically, these guys just don't unify. They pick up belts. They either go, if you're at 126, you pick up a belt, you might defend it a couple times, but then you eventually move up to 130. And the same thing for the guys at 130. You win a belt, you win and defend it a couple times. You might lose it, pick it back up, but then you move up to 135. That's what these guys do, and I'm expecting the same for Joe Cordina. You know what I mean? But Lee Wood is the fight for him as far as money, and that's what I expect him to do. I don't expect him. I like the Ogawa knockout. It was surprising to me. It was shocking to me at that time. It definitely was. Because Joe is just not known to be a big puncher. I think he timed the perfect shot, and it got him one of the best knockouts that year. With that being said, though, as good as I think he is, I just think that if he goes to 135, it's not going to get any easier for him, man. So I think the only way to really go here is the Lee Wood fight. And if that fight is very competitive, win or lose, they can run that back and get a rematch. I just don't see Foster or a Navarrete or even a Hector Garcia in the mix for Joe Cordina, right? As far as Vasquez, he went on a rant after the fight. He's basically said, yo, these guys will all beat you. Your punching power sucks, this, that, and the third. That's all cool, but at the end of the day, even if you are right, if you feel that these guys will beat you, at the end of the day, you just fought them. And you didn't do enough to get the win. I know that many people feel that he did, but it doesn't matter what other fighters would do against him. You know what I mean? It's just, whatever. I personally think Vasquez is better off fighting at 126. I don't know if he can make the weight anymore, but I think he would be a top dude at 126. At 130, I don't think he beat Shockey Foster neither. I don't think he beat Emmanuel Navarrete neither. So for him to say that against Joe Cordina, it was like, well, I got Navarrete beating you, and I got Foster beating you, and I got Hector Garcia beating you too if you guys were to fight, But I think Hector Garcia would be a more winnable fight. I like Vasquez. This is not a diss. I like him. But, just going on a rant like that, talking about what other fighters would beat you, they would probably beat you too. Just my opinion. All right. All right, so let's go into some boxing news, man. Real quick, you got Eddie Hearn. He's coming out and said that he's offering Bob Arum to make Taylor and Catterall too. All right, I saw this on Michael Benz's Twitter, according to him. No, I saw it on his Twitter, but I know there was an interview with IFL TV. Eddie Hearn always doing interviews with them, and he basically said that he's going to be sending an offer over to Bob Arum, who is the Top Rank, and Josh Taylor's over there fighting with Top Rank, and Jack Catterall is his fighter, and he's going to try to make the rematch. It will probably have to be a big offer for Josh. Josh is coming off a pretty dominating loss to Teofimo Lopez, and I think if Josh is to take the fight, the money's got to be right. Because that could be one of those fights where Josh, if Josh is to lose again, he's probably going to end up retiring, and he's probably going to want some money before that happens. I know they tried to make the fight before, but it didn't go down because Josh got injured, and then he went on to take Teofimo, and that didn't work out for him. So, I to be honest, me personally, logically, the fight should happen because I think Josh lost the fight. I think Catterall did enough to edge to win, even though Josh did come back. And, he didn't win the majority of the second half of the rounds. Josh was getting outboxed pretty clear to me, and he got dropped. So I think it makes sense for them to run him back. Also believe that I've lost interest in the fight. I don't care for the rematch that much. Maybe I will when the fight comes out. But right now, I don't really have much desire to see the fight like that, I just don't. But, I think Taylor should consider it because at 147, I really don't know what he can do there. You know what I mean? I don't think his loss to Teofimo was a weight thing. It might be a little bit of the weight. It might be a little bit of him being inactive. And I think it has a lot to do with Teofimo just having his number. I made this point in a video. Maybe I was live talking about it, but I made this point in a recent video, and I say, not for nothing, as good of a fighter Josh Taylor is, and I said this, he's given us one of the best runs for Undisputed out of all of the recent Undisputed champs. He gave us one of the better runs, if not the best runs, at 140. During that run, very competitive fights, very close fights, very debatable wins. And there were periods in the fights where he was being outboxed. You know what I mean? Luckily for him, he was able to make adjustments, usually having to turn it into a dogfight and pulling out wins against fighters that were having success against him, like Victor Postol and who else? Victor Postol, you had Regis Prograis, he had other fights there. You had a Catterall fight, of course, that I was just talking about. So when Teofimo won the fight, it wasn't that surprising, but it was surprising. It was, but it made sense. Teo's a good boxer, and if he's on point mentally, and if he's disciplined, he's pretty good. He's really good. All right, but I don't really know. Taylor doesn't have many options to me right now. I think that Catterall fight really messed things up. So maybe they shouldn't run it back. But I kind of lost interest in the fight, And Catterall is not really exciting to watch, too. It's just like he has one gear, And it's good because he's disciplined. I said this same thing about Richardson Hitchens. He has one gear. And being a southpaw, being that slick southpaw fighter, he's going to be outboxing you, but he's not going to change it gear. It doesn't matter how easily the fight is going. He's not going to change gears. He's going to stick to what's working and not adjust and try to stop you. You know what I mean? All right. Next topic, Virgil Ortiz Jr. They're eyeing a return in January 6th against Frederick Lawson. I was able to look Lawson up. Pretty much a tune-up fight. Pretty much a welterweight fighter. Has a few losses. I haven't seen him fight. Just kind of looked at his box rec just to see where he was at. It's a tune-up for Virgil Ortiz. He's not fighting a true junior middleweight, And look, man, when it comes to Virgil Ortiz, I think this period he's lost a lot of buzz. There was a period where him and Boots, it looked like they were on a collision course. It looked like Virgil Ortiz was like a fight away for fighting for a title, whether it was against Bud or Thurman or Spence or something. There was a time where Virgil Ortiz's name was ringing whenever you're talking about welterweights. You know what I mean? Top welterweights, Stanionis. That fight was supposed to go down, didn't happen. Virgil Ortiz's health, kidney issues. He's pulled out of 2 fights because of it and his health. And part of the health issues they think is him draining himself, and part of the reason why he's going up to 154 is because of these reasons. It's a shame. I've seen people talking. People suggested maybe he should retire. I think this health issue is going to always be a problem. Remember, he hasn't fought at welterweight for that long, and a lot of it has been gaps. He's definitely lost a lot of buzz because of the inactivity. Because he was one of the rising stars in all of boxing, not just welterweight, but just all of boxing, in my opinion. You know what I mean? So it's a shame, but this is part of the game with other sports as well. Fighters play with injuries. So it makes sense for them to just tune him up, get him back in there, let him, prepare, and hopefully he can stay healthy leading up to the fight. And hopefully he can get back. Again, 154 doesn't really get any easier. From welterweight. I think the potential fights with Bud and Spence, I don't want to say they're gone, but I don't know. I think there are still fights that are available for him, especially if he could get Boots later. But, man, when we remove Bud and Spence out of the equation, we had so many welterweights at PBC, and it's sad because you have Stanionis and Thurman is supposed to fight, right? Whenever, because now I don't even know if that card is gonna go down, but it's just weird because none of these guys are active. Stanionis is not active. Thurman's not active. Virgil Ortiz is not active. Boots Ennis is not active. You know what I mean? None of these guys are really active, and the buzz of the division, which has been one of the most popular divisions, is just lost its buzz because of the inactivity of everybody. Now I know Ortiz's inactivity has to do with the injury. You know what I mean? But hopefully he can bounce back. Hopefully he's healthy. I think if he cannot go through with this fight here because of health reasons again, maybe it'll be time for him to hang it up. You know what I mean? Because if he's preparing, I don't know if he's over preparing, but if he's having these health issues still, it might be a dub. You know what I mean? I don't know. Even with all the talent and all the potential, he definitely has championship level potential. If he can't stay healthy, it might be a wrap. All right. And if he is planning to fight a guy like Santion, who just beat Alexis Rocha, he needs to be a top tier shape, and I don't know if Santion has any plans of moving up to 154 to fight him, but I'm sure if the opportunity presents itself, he would. You know what I mean? And they're both Golden Boy fighters, but we'll have to wait and see. All right. Also, Hearn, he is trying to get Bivol to fight in return in January as well, on the same night that Beterbiev is fighting Callum Smith. All right. Eddie Hearn says he's still looking to try to make an undisputed fight between Bivol and Beterbiev. We know that these two recently had their face-off out there in Saudi Arabia when Tyson Fury fought Francis Ngannou. I mean, I've been making so many videos about this, and this is like, it's funny because we argue about people who's ducking who and how undisputed fights don't occur. And, these guys get a pass. They don't get as much attention as some of the other fighters that do the same thing. Bivol and Beterbiev has been the best two fighters at 175 for years. And I keep stressing, if the WBC is not sanctioning undisputed fight, why are they sanctioning a Russian fighter fights with the title right now? It's like you're allowing him to fight and be your champion. You're charging him sanctioning fees to hold that belt, but you won't allow him to get into an undisputed fight, a unification match with Bivol, another Russian fighter. Doesn't make any sense. I don't know what the real issue is. I don't know if it's just the WBC. I don't know if this a promoter issue with Top Rank. I don't really know, but they need to fix this problem. It's been too long. These two have been the best for too long, and we need to make the fight. All right. I think the little face-off they had at the Saudi Arabia event was cool. People were talking about it, but we need to fight, and Cal Smith, like both of them been fighting good fighters. Bivol for Zerto, for Canelo, Beterbiev for Yard, Smith. He's fighting he's fighting the other Smith. He fought Joe Smith before, now he's fighting Callum Smith. Listen, not bad fights, but those guys that are not champions need to fight each other. And Callum Smith should be fighting Anthony Yard. You know what I mean? That's that fight we should be getting. Not Beterbiev against Callum Smith, Liam Smith. I'm sorry, not Callum Smith and Anthony Yard. Let's get the real fight. So hopefully we get it. Bivol needs to get back in the ring because he hasn't been that active. I think he's lost his buzz as well, beating Canelo the way he did. And, coming off of that win, beating up Zerto even easier. And just going on this long period of inactivity. Plus, he's having some domestic issues. I still didn't read up on that. I told somebody in one of my lives that I would follow up with you with that. But it's kind of like I saw it on Twitter, and I didn't see it anywhere else, and I'll read up on it. I will. I just keep forgetting because no one's talking about it. All right, but Bivol needs to get back in the ring, man, and fight Beterbiev at some point if Beterbiev is to beat Callum Smith. Another dangerous fight, but again, Beterbiev is going in the ring with another dangerous puncher, and he's been fighting dangerous punchers for years. You know what I mean? He's a dangerous puncher. He's a more dangerous puncher than all of these guys, but Callum Smith is a big puncher, and Beterbiev is like 40 at this point. So we're waiting to see when this guy's going to slow down. He hasn't done it yet, all right? And last but not least, Derek Chisora calls out Francis Ngannou, officially calls him out. And I said this was going to happen. I said that Chisora was one of the guys that I could see Francis Ngannou fighting even before the Tyson Fury fight was official. I think there's levels of, now that he beat Fury, and I said in my most recent video about Ngannou, is that not beat Fury, but he had the fight with Fury where he looked good and performed well against Fury. Now that fight happened, I think if he was smart, he would only focus on getting a fight with Deontay Wilder, which is a fight that's also in the talks, or Anthony Joshua. You know what I mean? Fury's going to go on to fight Usyk. You are buzzing right now. You are the former UFC champ. You just arguably beat the boxing WBC champ. Why not go straight to the top or keep it at the top with fighting Wilder or Anthony Joshua? I think Chisora is always looking for the bag. He's call out anybody that he sees money in, and I'm not mad at that. Chisora was calling out Zhang before Joe Joyce, basically saying we could make a big fight in China. You know what I mean? Derek Chisora is in there. He's willing to fight anybody. He doesn't care about his chances of winning or not. He just said in the interview, he thinks that he can knock Ngannou out. You know what I mean? And to be honest, it sounds far-fetched now, but it didn't sound far-fetched prior to the Fury fight. But honestly, and shout out to my man, Boxing Beats and Rhymes. I saw him on Twitter talking about this, and he said this, and I agree with him. Based on the styles, Chisora may possibly give a better performance than Tyson Fury. Now that we know Ngannou is a legitimate boxer, and some may still question that, but after that performance against Fury, now every fighter that fights him, whether it's Wilder, Anthony Joshua, Chisora, whoever, everybody's going to be taking him seriously. They're going to be preparing for him like he's a real fighter. And Chisora, being that pressure fighter that he is, Ngannou, what happens if Ngannou can't knock him out so early? And they have to go rounds and rounds deep into the fight. If Chisora is able to take him to deep waters and pressure him, it could be a tough night for Francis Ngannou. It could be. Or Ngannou might go in there and fight the fight that we're used to seeing him fight in the UFC and take the fight straight to Chisora and knock him out. Chisora, yes, he's a puncher. He's a good pressure fighter. He's good. He's solid. But Ngannou is a monster when it comes to a fight. He's extremely strong. He is a bigger puncher. And you just never know, man. I mean, his fight with Tyson Fury his performance against Tyson Fury is not comparable to all three performances Chisora had against Tyson Fury. Now, styles make fights. And again, I think Chisora would have a chance. But I would be leaning towards Ngannou to win the fight if the were to go down. Because Ngannou has shown me enough in a Fury fight that he has a good bag of tricks. He could switch and change his game. He's pretty versatile. So I would be picking Ngannou to have that fight. But if Ngannou takes this fight, it should probably be because he can't get AJ in there or he can't get Wilder in there. I personally want Wilder and AJ to fight each other. But if either one of them decides to fight Francis Ngannou instead, I wouldn't be surprised because of the buzz of Ngannou right now. All right, but Chisora wants to fight. He actually put a flyer on his Instagram, social media. And he wants to fight, as a lot of other people right now. All right, but I don't see any other fight being realistic unless it's Wilder or unless it's Anthony Joshua, because they're gonna want the bigger name, the bag, and all that with Ngannou. All right, but if he goes in there with Chisora, he ends up losing to Chisora instead of losing to Wilder or losing to AJ. He might lose his buzz as a boxer. He might lose it. I'm saying he's not gonna make money. Not saying he ain't gonna have future fights, but it's gonna hurt him. So that's why I'm unsure if he takes a fight with a Chisora or a Zhang right now. You know what I mean? Do you really want to take those kind of fights right now? If you can get a fight, possibly if they can send you a good offer to fight AJ or Wilder, I don't really know. Anyway, that is the end of today's Wave Report. Please subscribe to the channel. All right. Please smash the like button if you enjoyed the content. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Y'all have a good day. Peace.